Okay, good evening. Well, October 1st, 2018. Where has this year gone, huh? So welcome to the October 1st regular city council meeting. Glad to see everybody in attendance. I hope you've had a great day. So would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Cochran? Here. Councilmember Gonzalez?
Here.
Councilmember Hamrick?
Here.
Councilmember Jaquez?
Here.
Councilmember Meisner?
Here.
Councilmember Turner? Here. Mayor Pro Tem Smith?
Here.
Mayor Troutman?
Here. Is Pastor Swearingen here? I am. Oh, okay. Would you please rise for the invocation?
Dear Heavenly Father, we just are so grateful for this city. We invite you into our time. We invite you into our city. Lord, thank you for your provision and all the resources that you've provided for us. And just help us be good stewards, God, of what you've given us in this city. And just ask that you'd give us wisdom as we continue to move forward in all the plans that you have for our community. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we're going to have the citizens' request to speak to council, and the order I have it is Ms. Kimmel. Would you like to address, and would you start the clock, please?
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, good. Thank you for letting me have a few minutes of your time. Had Cindy pass out some packets on the citizen survey that you just recently conducted, and I took your results and just reformatted it and laid them out in a different format. Hopefully for the ease of reading and comparison. So just real briefly walking you through it, the first 2 pages lines up the city's goals against the survey results, so it's all there at a glance. And so on the second page, though, I had a question, and you might question it as well. At the lower part of the page, I list the expenses that to kind of track those. And for this year, I didn't find the conclusive numbers on how much the survey costs us this year. I only saw the one bill in the list of bills, which was this agendas for the 4,100. So I didn't find any of the previous records, so I don't know how much it cost us this year.
Where did you get, is your number here?
When you talk in page 2,
I'm on page 2.
okay, you got at the bottom,
I'm
the
looking at that.
cost, 2013. You have, pulled those costs off of the agendas, previous agendas. But in meeting notes, I do not have the actual final bill costs that were billed out and paid. And they weren't in the list of bills.
And if I may add, that may be entirely possible. I mean,
Yeah.
because of just of billing cycles.
I
mean,
think
This
so.
was just completed, and so.
Yeah, I just don't know if we have the final cost yet. That was my question. Okay, it's not in.
This looks accurate, but we can give it to you. We have the actual cost. This looks right.
Pardon me? I couldn't
Looks
hear.
correct, but I can give you the actual cost tomorrow.
Okay, that's good. All right. Then also on this survey, I want to make sure this isn't in error, but this survey apparently surveyed 1,600 opposed to the 1,500 you did in the past 2. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. I guess, what was it, can't help but ask, but is there a reason why you increased the number of surveys we did this year?
There was no additional expense for that, so we asked for the increase.
Okay, that makes sense. And also, I couldn't find on the layout that your girl, Christy, is it? That puts that together your thing? She does a very nice job at that. How many responses did you get from this survey
We
this
had a
year?
32% response rate.
Yeah, that's the percent. Do you know the number?
I think close to 485. I
Okay.
can verify that again tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll look up the other ones too, because I couldn't.
Okay, will you
remember.
require a lot more time, Mrs. Kimmel, or you
No,
run out
I
of time?
just have
so-
one more thing for
Okay.
you. And 5 and 8, let me see, 3 and 4, you'll find that is comparing 2018 against your baseline survey of 2016. I think the last column you'll find quite interesting. It measures your results over the past 2 years. And then lastly, pages 5 through 8 were printed off in error because they were included in the workbook, but I went ahead and I left them there because we have some newer council members, and they might be interested in seeing them. So other than that, I don't have anything else for you unless you have some questions for me.
Questions, council? Okay.
Okay, thank you very much for your
Ms.
time.
Kimmel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Weed, I was going to call you last. No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, is there another one?
No,
I am last.
No, thankfully.
I hope not, I'm sorry. No. Mr. Dennis Weed, you're here to talk about CMAQ funds. Would you explain that quick?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think it's federal money, but CMAQ stands for CMAQ. It stands for Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality. And basically, the Canyon City gets money every year to pave unpaved roads. And several years ago, back when I was on city council, I had requested that it be considered that the longest and fairly heavily traveled unpaved portion of road in Canyon City be considered for use of the CMAQ funds. And off of 9th Street, there's the Vine Kuntz Fraser section. I don't know if any of you have ever driven that. It's kind of the backdoor way to get around the Highway 50 traffic lights. And so it takes you from 9th Street directly onto Main Street heading east. So you avoid a lot of the traffic. And it's fairly heavily traveled. It's at least locally referred to as the creek sneak, because there's irrigation ditches that run along. Anyhow, so this would be about 2.5 years ago. I had requested that that be considered, and like I said, at the time I was on council, and I was told that the funds for the next couple of years were already committed, the next couple of years being 2017 and 2018, but that in 2019 and 20, because it'll be a 2-year project, so it's about a mile of unpaved gravel road that has to be maintained, and it gets graded, I don't know, probably at least 3 or 4 times a year. Most of the time it's in pretty bad shape, especially after it gets wet. So anyhow, for the 19 and 20 years is when I was told that's when it would be up. And then apparently the CMAQ funds now have been, for 19 and 20, are going to be used for different streets. And I don't have the whole list of them, but I know one of them is Diamond Street south of Main Street, which is got to be one of the least traveled streets in town. And anyhow, I know budget time is coming up, and just I'd like to ask you to consider, and I don't live on Vine, Fraser, or Kuntz. I drive it occasionally, but not real often. But I'd like to ask you to consider using those CMAQ funds for the coming year or two to work on that road, because it desperately needs some help. And it's just a maintenance nightmare for the city.
That's Vine and Kuntz down that area?
Yeah, it's Vine, Fraser,
About a mile.
Kuntz. So Vine comes off of 9th Street, and then I think it's Fraser for a
Yes.
block, and then Coombs
Yeah.
for another half
Yeah.
a mile.
Right, okay.
All right, that's all I had.
Okay.
We have that in the budget. We have not designated the project. We want to talk to the council about this, so this discussion is fortuitous. Some of the roads you'd mentioned, Diamond, for example, may be problematic because it will require water line placement, so that really compounds the cost calculation of paving these unpaved roads. So the council will be considering this on October 15th and all the way into November, so you have plenty of time to discuss, and Adam will bring a series of analysis for different roads that you can select from, which will certainly have Vine on there for
Great.
consideration.
Well,
Okay.
appreciate you considering it.
All right, Dennis, thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Would it be okay if we recognize the Royal Gorge Republican women at this time?
I have one more.
Okay, sorry.
We will. Hi, how's that? No. Mr. Greg Dorito, would you like to address us?
What is this, a former council session?
Yeah.
You don't ever get out of the council thing, right?
I always miss my Monday nights having a strong commitment.
Oh, see.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, honored members of the council and staff. I'm here to speak this evening on behalf of nonprofit community in regards to our parking situation that seems to be in kind of a conundrum over in the Centennial, Royal Gorge Route, and Veterans Park area. Now, I'm aware that there are plans in motion to kind of work on some of these issues as they stand, but I'm speaking this evening because in the absence of an authority, there always tends to be somebody who will step in and take that authority. And I feel like the city has been a little bit absent in setting up a proper authority in that parking area. And as such, it seems that there's been some gray area that's allowed possibly entities to, take their spot in the absence of the city. And what I mean by this is the roping off and the signage in the public parking area over by Centennial Park, Veterans Park, Royal Gorge Route, in that central area. Now, as you guys all know, there is the parking situation of the train, excuse me, the passengers of the train, and they do need to have the proper parking area. And I believe that that is a staple in our community, and I'm by no means speaking out against that. I think it is an asset, and I don't want to see anything happen to it. But I also think that as stewards of the community, you always have to watch the best interests of the community, and I think that the best interests of the community in that particular area are to maintain freedom in that parking. Even though you and I as residents all know that there's parking at Centennial Park, in Centennial Park, the entrance to Centennial Park is somewhat off the beaten path to tourists, and most of them will opt for the Highway 50 4th Street frontage. So when they, as tourists to our community and new people coming in, drive up there and there's areas roped off and there's signs threatening towing of their vehicle, it creates somewhat of a chilling effect for some of our tourists in the community. It creates a chilling effect for the people that are attending our festivals and our events. And I think that the city spent a lot of money on Centennial Park, making it festival friendly and trying to encourage that type of event. I'm not saying that we need to kick anybody out. I'm not saying we need to prohibit anybody, but I think that perhaps maybe the city and the community would be benefited by the removal of the signs and just the placement of just public parking signs in that area so that it's open to all. I think that would prevent some of the conflicts between the volunteers and the train and vice versa, and I think it would be in everyone's best interest.
Okay, any questions of Mr. Dorito?
Well, maybe stick around for a discussion. We're actually going to be talking about that on our agenda today.
I understand this, so
Yeah, so-
I probably will. But thank you very much for your time. I
Thank you.
appreciate you listening.
Thank you, Greg. Okay. That's it. That's all the people have requested. We have someone else who would like to speak when we get to item number 11. We'll call that person up at that time. Are you Cassandra? I thought so. You looked like it. So, okay. We're going to have you come up when we hit item 11 on the agenda. It'll be probably around 10 o'clock tonight. No, I'm just kidding. It won't be. No. Okay, I'm just kidding. It won't be that long. Okay. All right, that covers that. Any comments from council this time? Ms. Smith?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to invite Timmy to come on up to the microphone, if you don't mind, as a representative of the Royal Gorge Republican Women. On September 22nd, there was the War Dog Memorial, which the mayor was at, and Councilman Hamrick and I, and an American flag and a Colorado flag was presented to City Council, plus a solar light was also donated to put on the flag pole so that those flags could be raised day and night. And we just wanted to officially thank you for that donation to our city to help enhance our Centennial Park and keep our patriotism alive. And also thank you for the hard work and effort you put into the War Dog Memorial itself. It was a very special event. And thank you for honoring our canines, our units.
Wow, thank you. It was my honor, and I was greatly enriched, and all of us that were a part of putting that together. I'm hopeful that those that attended, there's going to be stories told about that day. And when they see those flags flying over Centennial Park, it will resonate within them that it took, everybody coming together and recognizing what this community, Fremont County, sacrifices every day with our police officers, our search and rescue, the dogs who go and fight the wars on other shores and sometimes get left behind. And so I hope that there's a message that will always be flying over Centennial Park about what it's all about. And I was glad and thankful that we were able to give the city of Canyon City both of those flags. And it's a beautiful park. And I want to thank each one of you for the work that went into getting it to where it's at. The pavilion is awesome, and I enjoyed it very much being there with everybody. And Mayor Troutman, thank you for doing the honors.
Thank you.
And again, thank you very much. It was such an honor to do that for you, and I think the light will keep shining, so take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was very impressive. Ms.
Do
Gonzalez?
you have a question?
Timmy? Yes. There was something special about those flags that were presented. Can you share that with us?
Oh, well, yes, there was. The Colorado Department of Corrections was contacted, and they stepped up and donated $267 worth of flags. So that went to different entities that were there, and I said, well, a flag is a flag, but then it needs to be a special flag. So one of my leadership team and I went to Denver with all the flags, got Representative Wilson to help us out. So we took our flags up, and they guaranteed us that they would be flying over the state capitol for us in time for September 22nd. And so we went up, and then somebody there said, well, we usually give certificates for these flags, basically if you buy the flags from them. And I said, well, you call your supervisor up, because I said, these are the same flags that you get from Correctional Industries. We just brought our own. So I'd like to have a certificate. And got engaged in the phone call, and the supervisor just stopped her dead in her tracks. It was like, give them their certificate. So they worked very hard to get those certificates. I mean, she put in a lot of effort up there. So Representative Wilson and the House Legislative Secretary should be thanked. But yes, I was glad that we got to do that. And so when you see the flags, they've flown over the state capitol. So,
Thanks again. Thank you so much for the flags.
oh, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. That flag pole is the entrance, the first entrance when you come into to the park. We walked over there, and then they put the flag on. That was the Department of Corrections Honor Guard, which I had never seen, and they're quite impressive.
Oh, yeah, I forgot
So-
to say that. That's true.
Would you? No, that's okay. That's okay. That whole ceremony was, being a veteran and all the people that were there and the dogs especially that were there was very impressive. Our police officers and search and rescue, and thank you. It was a very nice ceremony. So,
The Honor Guard was very pleased to do it.
Yeah.
You know, it was the first time they'd ever done that.
but that's what my wife, that's what my wife said.
We had to say dog cameras, not dogs, but that's the first time they did it, so.
Yeah, it was very impressive. So thank you all for your listening out there. Thank you for your service, and of course, thank you for making that quite a ceremony. So,
Mr. Mayor?
yes.
I'd also like to extend a huge vote of gratitude and thanks to the Parks Department themselves, who that day not only prepared the park, you know, and the flagpole for the Royal Gorge Republican Women and the War Dog Memorial, but for our September 22nd grand opening and celebration for the Centennial Park and Groovalicious and Ryan back there, you organized the entire event with the bounce houses and the free family events, and it was a beautiful, awesome experience, and we are looking forward to doing more next year. But I know that our Parks Department worked so hard to get that park ready for us by that date. And I talked to Rex Brady, our director, today, if they would like to come to be recognized, and it sounds like those folks there at the Parks Department, they just like to take care of the parks and keep it at that, and didn't really want a public recognition, but I sure want to make sure that we let them know how much we valued their hard work and the pride that they have in that park that they gave us.
Well, that's odd. They helped put down, I had to remember which color went up. It's green side up. You've heard that joke? No? Okay, well. No, they're probably exhausted. But speaking of which, today I got a phone call from Economic Development Coordinator from Lamar, and had heard about the ceremony and about the park and about the splash pad and wanted more information about our famous splash pad. And I told them they need to come over here. We'll give them lunch and see that pad and everything. But they were talking about it. I don't know if it was necessarily Lamar, but they were talking about doing a splash pad. And they heard about Canyon City's famous splash pad. And I had to brag quite a bit, I'll be honest with you, about it. So it was quite a ceremony, and thank you for that. Any other comments or announcements from council?
Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Smith.
Speaking of the fame of the splash pad, it has also accrued some notoriety among a crowd in our community, the homeless population, that have been using it for some bathing as well as in our Veterans Park. And it's just indicative of some other problems we've been having with some homelessness in the area. And so today I just want to report to City Council that 3 council members today met with the Homeless Coalition along with Chief Harvey, a member of Loaves and Fishes, and other representatives of our community to start addressing and finding some solutions for some of the challenges that we're facing with the growth of homelessness in our community. We have a count of 200 homeless in Fremont County, and we're starting to see some of the effects of that and the need that we need to have protect our park and safety.
Okay, thank you. Are we losing people? Oh,
Frank had to step up for a quick.
okay. Did you have something, Ms. Gonzalez?
I
Okay,
do. I
go
have a
ahead.
couple of things. First off, about a month ago, staff put on a Business 101 class that I never recognized I attended, and I just wanted to put it out there how professional and informative it was. So if you or someone you know in our community is looking at starting a business in Canyon City, it is a informative class that could help you get off the ground. And then also, I didn't attend this meeting that Chief Harvey had put on last week about
Pawn shop.
pawn shops and merchants in our area that are buying goods. But I watched it over the weekend, and I just wanted to commend him on his professionalism and his ability to be able to speak with many of those merchants and constituents of the community. And then finally, I wanted to say thank you to my fellow council members for your generous donation of food for a family funeral that we had this weekend. It really took a load off of me and my family, so I just want to say thank you very, very much. And then to Tanya out there as well. So, thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Meisner?
Somebody's got don't we have a vision meeting or government meeting?
Government meeting.
General government meeting.
And just keep in mind, we're going to be discussing the deer issue, not because of my preference, but because the results of the survey came back at 71% of the people being in favor. So relative to our past discussion, it makes sense to at least look at that in conjunction with Division of Wildlife and their biologist. So we'll see how it goes on Wednesday.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, well, at this time, I'd like to call our Community Development Coordinator, Dina Svetlik, front. I have a proclamation. I'm going to proclaim October 2018 National Community Planning Month, and I would like to read I have a proclamation which I am going to sign. It's quite lengthy. Can I read it?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, so whereas change is constant and affects all cities, towns, suburbs, counties, boroughs, townships, rural areas, and other places, and whereas community planning and plans can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people work, live, and play, and whereas the full benefit of planning requires public officials and citizens who understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation, and whereas the month of October is designated as National Community Planning Month throughout the United States of America and its territories, and whereas the American Planning Association and its professional institute, the American Institute of Certified Planners, endorse National Community Planning Month as an opportunity to highlight the contributions sound planning and plan implementation made to the quality of our settlements and environment, and whereas the celebration of National Community Planning Month gives us the opportunity to publicly recognize the participation and dedication of the members of planning commissions and other citizen planners who have contributed their time and expertise to the improvement of the city of Canyon City, and whereas we recognize the many valuable contributions made by professional community and regional planners of the city of Canyon City, and extend our heartfelt thanks for the continued commitment to public service by these professionals. Now, therefore, it is resolved that the month of October 2018 is hereby designated as Community Planning Month in the city of Canyon City in conjunction with the celebration of National Community Planning Month, as signed by the mayor. Thank you, Dina. Would you like to make some comments?
Sure. Well, thank you. I think part of my role coming into the Community Development Director position is to try to educate folks on exactly what planning is in a community and for a community. And hopefully I've been able to start doing that in baby steps, and especially with, for folks that don't know, we now have a regular spot on fourth Wednesday of the month, so Community Development Wednesday on Morning Line, to try to spread the news on things that are going on in the entire department, special projects, ongoing projects, things like that, neighborhood cleanup that is coming out of our Code Enforcement Division, and just trying to educate folks on what planning is all about. We're not just about sort of the day-to-day applications that come in and doing review against our current zoning code or other elements of the municipal code, but we're also very much focused on looking at the long-term vision of the community, long-term viability from an economic, equity, and environment standpoint. And so hopefully we can continue to work on some of those, the long-term vision and viability of the community for Canyon City in the long term. And again, I'll do this as another plug for the upcoming sesquicentennial anniversary in 2022. And the goal is to hopefully have some plans in place and a vision for the next 50 years during that 150-year celebration coming up. So thank you.
Thank you, Dina.
Thank you, Dina.
Appreciate all you do for our city. Okay, let's move on to the adoption of the agenda and the consent agenda. Could I have the city administrator review that agenda or the agenda items?
Mayor and Council, 8A is a set of 7 minutes First one being the special council meeting of September 4th and September the 12th, and then a set of minutes regarding the regular council meeting of August 20th, September 4th, September 17th, the regular vision committee meeting of September 19th, and then a regular general government committee meeting of September the 5th. 8B would proclaim October 7th as Mount Moriah Lodge Number 15, Day in Canyon City, Colorado. 8C would award bid number 5218 for 520 linear feet of PVC water pipe for the 2400 block of Pearl Street to Core and Main Waterworks of Colorado Springs, the amount of $9,266.40. 8D would award bid number 49-18 to purchase 20,000 pounds of sodium chloride for the water treatment department. This generates chlorine dioxide for water cleaning to Evoqua Water Technology in an amount of $13,860. 8E, I'm going to have Adam come up and share with you the proposed bid. We had 5 bidders for the 2A Park Avenue project, and some good news on that.
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor and Council. So we did receive 5 bids. There was a spread from just under $400,000 to just over $900,000 on those bids. And then the low bid, the difference between the 2 alternates was only around $15,000. And that low bidder was Tony Beltramo and Sons. They're from Pueblo. They've worked for us before. They've done an excellent job on similar work. They just finished a similar job in Pueblo County, doing full depth reclamation. So we are convinced that they can do the work for the price that they gave. I've also had several conversations with the contractor since the bid, and they're comfortable still with their numbers. They just think it's just the timing of where they're at with their projects and so forth based on, and they had not been a bidder on the previous projects, so they think that may have something to do with the difference in the bids, but they are confident they can do it, and again, we're comfortable with that contractor. So this is just like the project and the bid that we did for Field Avenue. This is just for Park Avenue between 9th and 12th. We are still looking at which alternate is best for them. So again, on the award, we're looking at the high number for award, just in case that's where the negotiation goes. Another thing that's different on this job is we are asking for a 20% contingency. We're getting a little late in the season. We do have some force account costs for ground heating in case it's needed. We hope it's not, but we want to be prepared for that if it is. So what we're asking for is award to Tony Beltramo and Sons of Pueblo for a total, including the contingency, of $476,595.54. And then also I want to note that we left a memo at your seat tonight. I just gave a status update to Tony as far as where we're at with 2A projects. And unless we hear any objections tonight, one of the things we want to do is get going after tonight's award on the next year's streets as far as design and survey, so that we're not bidding in October, we're bidding in April, hopefully, next year. That's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Any questions, Mr. Lancaster? Mr. Meisner?
Mr. Council. Adam, I was under the impression that the city's preference was for full depth reclamation.
It's
based
not
upon the last couple of years of discussion.
Sure.
Are we shifting now?
It's not necessarily preference. It's an engineering alternate that we do that has some advantages and sometimes doesn't have advantages depending on what the subgrade is. One of the great advantages typically is cost. But again, on the last 2 bids, the costs have been so close. Then what we do is we go back to the contractor and our consulting engineer and have them relook at that street specifically and say, which is, at $15,000 difference, what is the best process for this street? So one of the main reasons we chose full depth reclamation for Field Avenue is for speed. It is a lot faster, a lot less disruption. So because of where that was located by the schools, that's one of the main reasons we went with that option over there. So we'll look at the same things, but both options have their pros and cons. That's why we did an alternate, not just to look at cost, but to also look at that best method based on where we end up on that particular street. And so it seems like it's working out that way, and that would be my intent to kind of work through that next year. There's always the option, depending on what the consulting engineer finds under the ground, there could even be a different alternate that comes up at some point. For example, none of this anticipates cement treat, but we have it in there as a unit price in case we run into the real soft spots where we have to cement treat. So in last year's projects, we did have 2 streets where we had to do cement treat, just because even the FDR didn't work for those soft soils.
So does that mean that if we do the FDR, that we would do the lower price?
Yeah, actually, in this instance, it came out lower, right? So if we determine that FDR is the best option for this street, we'll save a little more
We'd do
money.
it at 460.
Yep. And if any money that's unused obviously stays in this account, it's not general fund money in the,
Right.
that stays in 2A. I just want to state that for the public. It's, if it's saved money, it goes to the next project. That's why on that memo, you'll see like a 5.8 million for next year. That's just because we're anticipating rolling funds. You'll notice a difference in your budget that's being approved soon, that it doesn't have 5.8 in that budget because we're anticipating spending that 3.5 million this year. Well, we've gotten some good prices, so subject to whatever we spend on engineering for the rest of the year, there's going to be rollover funds next year, so there'll probably be a reappropriation next year for additional funds into 2A. And that's simply just because we just got started a little late this year.
Ms. Gonzalez?
So with that said, does that mean that each street gets bid out separately, or is it bid as a whole project?
No, our direction that we received from you guys this spring was make these projects as small as possible so that the local contractors can bid on them when possible. There was some local bidders that bid on this. One of those is Avalanche, that frankly, they have 3 other projects going on with us right now, so their price may have been better if that wasn't the case. I don't know. So no, yeah, that's our intent. We're going to continue on the path forward from where we started this spring, and again, unless we hear different from you, that's what we want to do.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Smith?
I say, yeah, let's get moving on it. I want to see some more streets get built for sure. And I'm really happy to see Myrtle Lane on this list because I know that they're getting the Safe Schools grant for sidewalks. I can't believe that school has never had sidewalks. And finally, after decades, I don't know, it feels like century, they're finally getting a sidewalk, but they definitely need a new street to go along with it.
Yeah, both, so 4th Street, Myrtle, and Main Street are all tied to those Safe Routes to School projects next summer.
So, yeah, so I'm glad to see those bundled together. And thank you for this list. I really appreciate having this.
Sure. Okay. Mr. Meisner? Good. Mr. Hamrick?
Thank you. So Adam, how does the issue that Dennis brought up about our unpaved Coons, Fraser, and Vine, how does that fit into our planning process? Or is that since that has never been paved, that's not really a reconstruction?
Yeah, it has nothing to do with 2A. That's why we use CMAQ funds for that. It would never qualify for this type of stuff or other types of grants. That's why it's used for that.
Okay, so that's why that grant would be used for those particular streets. And do we have something planned for that the next year or so?
So typically, that again, that's federal dollars through a grant that's administered by CDOT. As you're well aware, typically it takes a good year's process to get through design and clearance on those. We just finished a project, so we always budget for that money, the minimum amount plus the rollover dollars to keep track of that every year, but we don't spend it every year. We used to do a lot smaller projects, and we would do a CMAQ job when we first got the money every year. Since then, we haven't been able to keep up on the bigger projects in the time it takes to get the contracting through CDOT, so we've been doing them every other year. So it's likely we won't see another CMAQ project until 2020. And then 2020 also, that is in front of the Transportation Commission in the next couple of months. And also some of that is a little bit tied to some of the tax questions that are on the ballot. But it's likely that we will, because now we are in attainment for our dust mitigation, it's likely we will lose that money in 2020. That'll be the end of that run. Even though we will get all the money that we were promised up to that point, even if it's not spent until it's spent. But that $200,000 a year will probably dry up in 2020.
And the issue on the ballot is the statewide ballot,
Correct.
not our local.
That's correct.
Thank you for that explanation.
Anyone else? Ms. Meisner?
Prior to the 2A, and we talked about, I think, the street improvement plan or the city's improvement plan that was referred to in the ballot. I thought that you had given us a list of how each of those streets graded out and what the priority was for that list. Is that list still available?
Sure, yep. And actually, I talked to Tony about that today. We need to update the map and that list for the website based on what we've completed.
And where do these streets stand on that list?
These were on the original list. The exception is probably Myrtle because that got added for the Safe Routes to School project. But all of these thoroughfares would have already been on the list. We are almost to the end of our thoroughfare list on the ones that were low-hanging fruit, so to speak. I know that 9th Street's always out there as some, and we'll talk about that some more when we're talking about stormwater projects. But we're almost at the end of the easy thoroughfares, and then you may recall we just had a long list then of local streets, and so even that list I gave you tonight in that memo is not exhaustive, depending on what happens with water budget and other local streets that we may be able to throw in there easily to get stuff done.
Anyone else? For Mr. Nixon? Thank you, Adam.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Going back to the consent agenda, 8F would authorize the city administrator to sign the Kinder Kids Child Advocacy Center Operations Agreement. This would cover forensic medical examinations and interview services for a one-year period with an annual option to renew on the basis of either party. Staff further, and that's essentially the further request that we have the right to continue that agreement as long as there's not a cost impact above what we're agreeing to with this existing contract. And then finally, 8G would authorize the mayor to sign a water service contract for a property at 1300 Sherman with John and Linda and Jason Sand for city water services. And then the list of bills. Any questions?
I have one on C, with the necessity for a water main pipe on 2400 block. Is it Pear or, you said Pear or is it Pearl?
Pear.
Pear, I thought you
Yeah.
said Pearl.
I'm sorry.
There's no water line there or what?
It's a improvement, a section of improvement.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Ms. Smith?
Mr. Mayor, I was wondering if there were any representatives here from the Child Advocacy Center, if they wanted to address City Council.
That was my next question. I didn't know who Kindred Care is. What is that?
Hi, I'm Lori Jenkins. I'm the coordinator for the Children's Advocacy Center, and we just want to thank you for being a partner with us, along with the police department. We officially had our first medical exam today. So we have done a soft open. We will do a hard open on January 1st when more of our equipment arrives. Do you have any questions?
Can you tell us a little bit more about your service?
Absolutely, sorry. So Kinder Kids Child Advocacy Center is a place where we provide a safe environment for children and their families to come once they have disclosed sexual assault on a child. We service children from the ages of 18 down to 3 or 4 newborns, whatever, wherever that disclosure is. We provide a place for them to come. They are able to meet with law enforcement. It's our multidisciplinary team. So that's law enforcement, Department of Human Services, District Attorney's Office, a forensic nurse from St. Thomas More, and then mental health from mental health providers here in our community. So they're able to come there, one place. They meet with each one of those entities to do the investigative pieces or the therapy pieces there, instead of having to go to all of the various agencies throughout the town. Many of our families don't have reliable transportation. They may be coming from Westcliff, And so providing them with one central location for them to be at in a comfortable environment versus, you know, an interview room at the PD or the hospital waiting room, it just provides them a little bit more of a comforting place for them to take care of those agency things.
Lori, is it only sexual assaults that are done, or is it other, like domestic abuse?
When children advocacy centers were developed, originally it was just sexual assault. However, we're starting to see that we're expanding those services to physical abuse, and if there are witnesses to domestic violence, we may be called in, kidnapping, a witness to a homicide. Really, any time that a child would need to be interviewed or get a medical exam for assault purposes or physical abuse, we're hoping that our law enforcement and our Department of Human Services will give us a call so that we can facilitate all of those types of services in one place.
Okay, and Lori, I'm Ashley Smith, by the way. We've been in contact via email
yes.
from the Fremont's Exceptional Women. We're going to be raising money for the Children's Advocacy Center because you operate by grant money.
We
That's
do.
correct. So it's purely through grant and donations.
Yes, we are 100% grant funded, and then we also have received quite a few generous donations from our community, whether it's monetary or donations of blankets, food, snacks for the kids, toys, fish tanks, things like that. We've been getting community support that way.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. It's really sad that we need this service and that it's already started. And from what I understand, you anticipate 100 to 150 exams or cases.
When we did our analysis, we were able to identify 100 cases in the past year that would have come to a CAC if we had that open. We anticipate that once the CAC is open and people know about us, those numbers are only going to rise because people will feel more comfortable having their children disclose. We don't want it to increase, but the reality is that it probably will. When we went to Alamosa to look at their CAC, they started out with 110 cases. Their very first year of a complete open was over 300. So I truly hope we don't have that many, but I do hope that we're able to serve those who are able to come and come to the CAC.
And would it be possible when you're ready for your heart open that maybe city council members could come and see your facility? And
Absolutely. We've been doing some private tours of some of our donors that have come through already, but our plan is to do a heart open in January when all of our equipment is there. And if we need to do an open house for each individual group, we can do that, or one big, huge community open house would be great.
Thank
We
you.
would love to have you.
Ms. Gonzalez?
With the numbers that you gave us, so it seems like you're having a lot of success in maybe prosecuting some of these offenders. Do you see that happening, or is that?
I don't know that I can speak to that piece of it because I'm not on that side. That would probably be more of the district attorney, or Chief Harvey could probably answer to that. Our mission is to be able to help children through the process. And in helping children through the process, we have to be able to conduct interviews in a way that will help prosecution do their job of going to court, I guess, is what I would say. So we hope that will help. We also hope that by providing medical exams in child-friendly environments, that not only will our children feel more comfortable, but we'll get better examinations from there as well. They're not pressured to leave in a short amount of time. They haven't spent 2 or 3 hours already in the ER waiting for someone to arrive. They're in a nice, safe environment that's more like your house. We actually have a living room, so it is more like a house.
Great. And then also, have you already started developing relationships with DHS and other entities within our community?
Yes. So in order to start this whole process, we decided that in order to get it going, we had to have all of those partners on board at the very beginning. So our very first meetings included DHS, the district attorney, St. Thomas More, all 3 law enforcement agencies. And so when we did that, the agreement was that everybody was going to get on board, use the CAC in whatever capacity they're agency needed. And so we have DA Molly Chilson is on our MDT team, Stacy Quiddick, all of the law enforcement heads are there. We also have Star Point and Southern Peaks, St. Thomas More, and then mental health. So we have gotten huge response from Department of Human Services and the District Attorney's Office. It's been
Great.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Hammer?
Yes, Lori, thank you for being here.
Sure.
And I just have a couple questions. I'm headed towards a contract question here.
Okay.
So this is more on the legal side of things. But do you intend, or is it possible that you'll be providing these services outside of the Ohio Avenue facility?
No. Let me I think I know what you're asking. Would we be doing services for medical exams and interviews outside of Ohio?
Correct.
No. So if, for example, the contract you're talking about talks about medical exams conducted only at the Children's Advocacy Center, if we had a case where it was deemed by our forensic nurse that that child needed to go to the emergency room, we would not be charging you for that. That would be, the hospital would be charging you just like they do right now.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
It does. And
Okay.
so my point is that right now in the contract, it does not specify where the CAC is. And so I think that probably needs to specify at what address the services would be provided.
Ms. Cochran?
I also have a contract question. It's a little bit nitpicky, but
That's okay.
it says in here that you guys will provide or furnish the necessary equipment. Are you guys also maintaining that equipment, or
Yes.
once it's been provided?
Yes. Well, we hope there's not a whole lot of maintenance that goes along with it. The equipment is quite costly. But yes, we will be maintaining that as well. We were able to work out with the hospital. They're actually trading in some of their equipment to upgrade it to equipment that we are going to then purchase. So yes, we'll maintain all of those.
And then just one more question. What's your service area, if you could call it that?
We, as a CAC, we provide services to the entire 11th Judicial District.
Okay.
So we have our MOU currently includes all of the law enforcement agencies in Fremont County. We're working on Custer County and some of those other outlying counties in the 11th Judicial District. But they also can go to other CACs that may be closer. Some of them are just, this is a little bit further for them. They don't want to drive that far.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Turner?
I just have, I think there's just a word missing on the second page of the contract. So I just wanted to put this on the record so that when we finalize, we can have it there. But on the second page, under the confidentiality section, it is the fourth line down, where it says, now or in the future. I think there should be the word to before divulge.
Okay.
And then I had a question for Tony.
Sure.
Did the city attorney review this contract then? Have we had them review it?
I may have. It's been a long time though.
Okay.
I'd have to check to make
Yeah.
sure, because I looked at a couple and Derek may know the answer.
Yeah.
Better than I.
Yes, the city attorney did review this before the final draft was actually submitted to council.
Okay. When you do your memos, could you note that in the memo then, so that we know going into the meeting whether the attorney has reviewed it? Because I wouldn't have known that based on the memo that you provided to us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank
you so much. Wow, there's a trip in reality, isn't it? So- Okay. Any other questions of council?
G, yes.
What? G?
Authorize the mayor to sign.
We did that.
We did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Ms. Gonzalez?
I just have a correction on the minutes for the September 17th regular city council meeting.
Did you get the revised ones?
Yep. This one says in the roll call on
It's the vote.
executive session, Mr. Meisner was a nay.
I remember a nay in there somewhere, but I couldn't remember which nay is that.
I also have a question.
Yes, Ms. Cochran, go ahead.
Is everybody on the right page? She's right.
She's correct, yeah, that is correct, you did nay. You nayed that. Ms. Cochran?
My question is on D, and it's just kind of out of curiosity, but how frequently do we need to purchase 20,000 pounds of sodium chloride? Do we know?
Usually annually.
It's a once-a-year thing? Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Ms. Turner?
I just have one quick, on 8H, which is the list of bills, I was curious about our purchase of ditch shares and why we buy ditch shares. Looks like we bought a share and a half that we've paid for.
Mr. Lancaster, could you address that, please? I know you have the answer.
Because we could.
We have a standing purchase for hydraulic ditch shares because those are the only ones locally that can be transferred to municipal use. So we're always building our water stock. And so sometimes people want to sell them and sometimes we make deals to buy them, and that's why.
Okay,
We
thank you.
have hundreds and hundreds of shares, because I have to go to the shareholders' meetings to represent the city.
Yeah, I just saw it in the list of bills and it made me curious, so I appreciate you
Those-
answering my
Yeah,
question.
hydraulic ditch shares are the ones that are already decreed for municipal use, so we don't have to go to water court to use those for the water system.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Hammer?
I move that we approve the agenda and consent agenda with the modifications of adding a place, location for the CAC, making the revision to the adding to, and also modifying the minutes as stated.
Second?
Okay, made and second. Has any discussion on that motion?
Just quick,
Mr.
I
Meisner?
didn't
Yes?
get to ask it, but relative to the pear thing, the street, where does that then stand on the 2A list? If we're replacing a water line, is that what we're doing?
Yeah, there's a 520 linear foot section that we're replacing from cast iron to PVC.
And that would be paid for out of the water fund.
Yes, yes.
So reclamation would be out of the water fund.
Right, I
Yeah.
understand that.
Okay.
I'm assuming, I mean, Adam's here, that's probably a street that has very little traffic and wouldn't rise to the current level of priority, but.
My concern is we're spending water main replacement dollars on a non-2A potential street. And I realize there's an error factor there, or not an error, but a risk factor.
Yeah, so, I mean, it could be a two-way street. It's not one of the thoroughfares, so that's why it didn't rise to the top of the list. The reason we're doing this water main is because somebody needs a water tap there. And so what happened is, we had an old water main there that had some vacant lots adjacent, and when it went bad, instead of us fixing it at the time, we just turned it off. So now someone who has a right to tap in there, it's actually the Home by Ed house that started that. So they need a tap, and so we have to go replace our main to give them water. So it's not, it's basically one that, because there was no one using water at that time, we just turned it off for the time being. Which was probably a poor choice at the time, but it was a long time ago.
Okay.
And it-
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Any more discussion on the motion?
I do.
Ms. Cochran?
I just have a quick question on G. That does not require the tearing up of any streets, or they can just tap in and it's good?
So they're replacing a section of line, so they will tear up the street and
No, no.
replace that section.
On G, the,
The resident.
That's
No,
in the
it seems-
county. That's outside the city
oh,
limits.
so
Yeah.
we
But
don't
it's
have to
a-
worry about, okay.
Okay, any other comments or discussion on this? We beat this enough then? Okay, well, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Cochran?
Aye.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Aye.
Councilmember Hamrick?
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Turner?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith?
Aye.
Unanimously passes.
Thank you. All right, number 9 is to continue public hearing to consider renewal of a retail liquor license, a tavern license for McClure's Tavern located at 117 North 4th Street, Canyon City. This has been continued from the August 20th, 2018 and September 17th, 2018 regular city council meetings. I am reopening the public hearing at this time. And Chief Harvey, would you give us a report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So on September 21st, my crime prevention specialist went back out to, actually at the daytime during that day, back out to McClure's to give an assessment of the physical security of the building, to look at some different areas that might be able to provide the business better security inside the building as well as for patrons outside the building, since there was some concern about those in the alley as well as those loitering in front of the business. There were several things that came out from that, and so the high points really were that the lighting in the alley was insufficient. There was also some lighting inside the bar that needed to be moved, as well as some visibility for bathrooms. Primarily the bathrooms, the concern there was that staff had relayed, McClure staff had relayed that there are times where they have to intercede, or that there are folks that they know are trying to get into their bathrooms to utilize drugs. They have also found indicia of narcotics use inside the main area there, and so there were some security considerations that were made to the staff, and I think they have a report out on some changes concerning that. And the blind spots for the closed-circuit cameras, that there were areas of concern where things may be happening in addition to the lack of lighting in those areas. So the McClure staff has made some changes with that as well. They also were requested to do some safety training through the Department of Revenue, which they did. And they were requested to identify a person that's able to make management-level decisions that's either per the code, either on-site or immediately available, and they have identified a new person, which I think is going to be speaking to you tonight, who actually has a pending application with the Division of Revenue. So her fingerprints have been submitted for a background application to be designated as management on the permit. Kind of on a side note, they have been very responsive and very open to some of the suggestions and recommendations that we've had as a police department, and it's a change from things that have happened in the past. And so I think it's noteworthy that this conversation has been a very productive one, that not only have we had beneficial conversations, but they have actually transitioned into actionable changes. I think you all have some stats report for all licensed bars that are within the city, and so I would expect that to continue to be provided to council as kind of an update, and I would expect that these changes will help minimize some of the nuisance calls that we have discussed in the initial license renewal. So unless there are specific questions for me from council at this point, I'd like to turn it over to the management of McClure's to talk about some of these safety, training, and policy changes that they've made as a result of these recommendations.
Okay, any questions, Ms. Cochran?
On here you have, or whoever wrote this memo has, that they had requested additional training from this police department scheduled for September 14th. I know last time you had come, that was postponed. Has that happened?
It has not. So the training that actually occurred was the basic tips training, which is essentially how to determine over service and how not to violate the code. There are also some basic bar safety tips that go over that, but the safe bar, which is what that meeting was referring to, there were some other bars who had not been noticed of that particular meeting, and so we're trying to regroup in amongst the several other things that the police department has going on. So the answer to your question is no, but that will happen hopefully within the month of October to actually go to safe bar training, which also talks about sexual assault prevention and some basic tips that staff can do to prevent tampering with ladies' drinks in the bar, as an example. So that has not happened yet.
Okay.
Ms. Gonzalez, go ahead.
On that training, now is that a charge? Is there a charge for that training, or is that a free training that's available to the community?
So the one that they did, actually, there is a charge. And
Okay.
that's a regulated training by the Division of Revenue, so I don't have any sway over that. But the training that we're looking at doing actually for Safe Bar would be free to all participating bars.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, Chief, we can reserve you for after the comments here.
Sounds good,
How's
Mr.
that?
Mayor.
Reserve you, so. Ma'am, would you step up and give us your name and position, please?
Angelia McCaffrey. the manager.
Any questions of Angelina? Well, that was easy. Would you like to make a comment?
Yes, actually, according to the security analysis, we added more lighting to the alley and to the front of the building for nighttime. We added newer cameras for better images for the police in case they need them. We added 2 additional girls for the weekend nights and busier nights so that we can look to the bathroom and more areas outside and such. And we also have a door guy. We've 86 anybody that's suspected of doing drugs or has been arrested for doing drugs, whether it's at our bar, any bar, or in town, pretty much. That's it.
Okay.
Oh, and we post our 86 on the mirror so that all the patrons and bartenders know everybody.
You're 86. Would you
Yes.
explain that term?
86 means you're not allowed in our bar on our premises.
Okay, thank you. I think I knew that, but thank you. I'm not on that. I don't know.
You knew it.
No, no.
I didn't.
Ms. Gonzalez.
Hi, thank you for being here. My question is, how long have you worked at the bar, Angelina?
6 years.
6 years.
Almost 7.
Okay, and do you feel like the environment is getting safer? More safe for you to be working there?
Oh, yes,
or-
definitely.
Okay. And in what ways would you feel in what ways would you feel more safe? What are the changes?
We've upped our security more, like, as far as like no loitering, we don't let anybody hang around out front anymore, where all the girls are very adamant about they gotta leave or we will call the police. So we've gotten less people hanging out on our bench. With the new lighting, they don't go into the alley as much because it's very bright. I told the security analysis lady, or anybody could go drive by there, it's very bright. It brightens the whole block.
And do you feel like the relationship between your establishment and the police department has gotten more positive?
Yes.
Okay, so you feel like you can pick up the phone and call and not?
definitely.
Okay, good, thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Cochran?
I just want to say, it sounds like you guys are taking this seriously and implementing some much-needed improvements, and I just want to say I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions of the staff, the owner? Ms.
I do.
Smith?
So you mentioned some of the things that you have done to come into compliance and have more safety. I have a couple more questions. Concerning the bathroom security, have you implemented anything to help with the bathroom security?
We
with
have
drug use?
cameras where we place the cameras. We talked about putting mirrors, but if we put up the mirrors, then we take away the cameras. So that's why we've hired additional people on busier nights so they could make sure they can look around more. And we
So-
take breaks and we check the bathrooms, which we've done anyway. We just do it more now. And we have security that walks around as well.
So does that cover also the blind spots that are closed to the
No,
circuit
it's a
cameras?
barrier wall, so you can't knock the wall down.
Okay, so what about the blind spots to security cameras?
The cameras, we put new cameras up, so the whole bar is under, except for inside the bathroom, even on top of the roof, is all under surveillance. All around the building and all on top of the building and inside. We have
And-
16 cameras total.
And you have more lighting on the inside?
Yes.
And are you committed to attending the safety training, the police training in
Yes,
October?
the girls will be mandatory, they have to, just as well as the tips training.
And who is the second manager that you're putting
It would
onto
be
the?
Vernon and I.
Vernon, do you work at the,
He's the owner and I'm the manager.
so I thought I heard that there was going to be a second manager as well.
Vern's a manager and runs it, and I applied for the management. I would be the second one.
And what is the status of your manager application?
So, Councilwoman Smith, to clarify my comment earlier, the additional person is actually Angela. So Vern is currently listed as management and owner. As far as his time frame on the property, I can't specify that or speak to that, but Angela is on the property quite a bit more, and so she actually has filed her application. As far as actually getting anything back from the city clerk, I don't think it's been received yet as far as her background application.
The paperwork goes in tomorrow. We have everything. We're waiting for something from the Department of Revenue to clarify a few things of what has to be filled out, and then it will be sent off.
Okay.
Anyone else? Mr. Meisner?
How long have we been working on that? Hasn't it been weeks?
It has been.
The manager application.
I'm going to refer that to the city clerk.
We just got it on Thursday, which is when we had talked to him about a timeline. There was some background stuff had to come in before she could get it in.
So this might answer your question, Councilman Meisner, is that we have been working on it this entire time. It's not that it's waited to the last minute before this council meeting, but there were some things that had to be done, not only with the Division of Revenue, but, Department of Revenue, but also some things that the applicant was waiting for to be able to submit that to the Department of Revenue.
Okay.
Ms. Cochran?
One more question for you, Chief. They've talked about all the stuff that they've improved on and changed. Is there anything that you would still like to see done or feel that needs to be changed?
I think the changes that we're talking about right now are fundamental management changes to security. And so that willingness to identify blind spots, to make physical security improvements, as well as add additional staff for security, that's really the best place to start. And so now it's really about continuing the conversation over the next licensing year to have a good back and forth conversation about were those changes successful, or are there other things? So at this point, it's really just my wish would be is a continued conversation with management about problems that we're seeing and that open flow of communication between the two of us.
Anyone else? Then I would entertain a motion and a second. Would anyone like to make that? What we're making, as I assume, is to renew, a motion to renew the liquor license. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's what we'll be doing. So would someone like to make that motion?
So I have a question. We can't postpone it anymore. We have to
Why do
renew
we
it.
want to postpone it?
Well, I think we've kind of run that out.
Okay.
I think we have. Okay? We're down to a motion on the license. That's what I called for. Let's do that. Mr. Meisner.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I move that we approve the retail liquor license for McClure's Tavern located at 117 North 4th Street in Canyon City, Colorado.
Second.
Second. Thank you.
And recommend the same to the Department of Revenue. Is that up to us to make a recommendation to the Department of Revenue?
No.
Thank
No,
you.
it's just theirs. Is there any discussion on that motion and second at this time?
I have a quick comment. I would commend all parties involved in the process from where we were at a month and a half ago to where we're at tonight. And I realize we're probably moving some of your crowd somewhere else. And we'll deal with that problem when we get there.
Okay. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Cochran? Aye. Councilmember Gonzalez?
Aye.
Councilmember Hamrick?
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Turner?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith?
Hi.
Unanimously carries.
Thank you very much for all your effort and everything, and we hope to continue this.
Thank you
Okay?
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's go on to number 10, is consideration of municipal code update pertaining to vicious dogs. This has nothing to do with what we discussed prior. I just thought I'd throw that in. Ordinance number 25, Series 218, for introduction and first reading by title only, entitled, "An Ordinance of the City of Canyon City, Colorado, adding Section 6.08.010 to the Canyon City Municipal Code concerning vicious dogs." Could I have a report from the city administrator?
When this matter was brought to you earlier, there was a concern about classifying a dog as being vicious if it may have attacked a domestic chicken or geese or ducks, since we have them all over our city parks. The city attorneys have put in an exception for that, so if by chance our normal domesticated dogs were to attack a chicken, goose or geese or ducks, they would not be classified as vicious.
Okay. Any questions of this administrator? Mr. Meisner?
It's not for the administrator.
Okay, well, could,
Well-
well, I'm not done yet. Any discussion of the, with the administrator, then we'll get to your question next, okay? Ms. Cochran?
I just want to clarify that based off what we talked about, I believe it's the last council meeting about restitution, if chickens do get
Yeah,
eaten, there is a recourse in the judicial sense, but the dog itself will no longer.
That's correct, because
Okay.
you recently authorized the municipal judge to consider restitution, and this would be a very
Well,
good example of that.
That's not quite accurate, because if you bring a case for a vicious dog and the definition accepts out fowl, chicken, geese, ducks, then no, there's no case to bring, so there's no restitution.
You just couldn't do like for damages or loss of property?
No, that's not a criminal matter, that's a civil one.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So you actually have to have an underlying criminal case to ask for restitution. So if you can't bring a criminal case, because you've accepted fowl out of the definition of a vicious dog, you can't ask for restitution.
You could bring a small claim case,
That's
though,
not,
right?
I'm not going to give legal advice to the public, yeah.
Okay, well-
I suppose you could, but I'm not going to.
Right, there is a civil procedure that folks could avail themselves of. You wouldn't necessarily have to have that definition in the definition of a vicious dog.
So nothing in this code regulates the small claims court system or any kind of civil matter at all. This is just a criminal matter, so.
But would there be an opportunity for restitution? Yeah, through other vehicles.
Okay. Now, Mr. Meisner. Sorry, didn't mean to step on you.
My dog, by definition of this ordinance, is still a vicious dog if you walk up to my fence, and I am completely opposed to that. But if I let you in my gate, it's a whole different matter. And that's my point. And there are many dogs in this community that are naturally protective of their boundaries and are going to display the descriptors that you put in this ordinance.
Do you have
And
a
it's
sign in
crazy.
front of your property?
Pardon?
Do you have a sign in front of your property, beware of dog?
I think I've been told legally that makes it even worse.
I don't see why, I mean, if I see a sign in front of a house that says beware of dog, then I am going to do what the sign says. I'm going to beware of dog. I ain't going to just walk into a yard, with a sign like that there.
Well, according to this, Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Smith?
thank you, Mr. Mayor. According to this ordinance, the dog would only have to be barking and gnashing its teeth, even if it's safely behind a fence, and it could be taken to court and deemed a vicious dog. And so we did have this conversation last time, too, that many of us are uncomfortable with the language. It seemed pretty excessive compared to a lot of other states and cities to add so much specific language about a vicious dog. I'd prefer to see at the third line, have it end at domestic animal, livestock, with the exception of fowl, period, and then get rid of all of the next 1, 2, 3, 4 sentences, and just continue on to or engages in harbored primarily or in part for the purpose of fighting, et cetera, et cetera. Like Meisner said, your dog would be considered vicious. Based on my years of training for half marathons and full marathons and running all over Canyon City, I would say that probably at least 80% of Canyon City's dogs would also be considered vicious. But I do understand that we need to have an ordinance at some point, because in a conversation with my veteran, he says most humans are bitten by dogs because they're trying to break up fights between other dogs. And that's kind of the next step, the first step before they start harming other people. So my suggestion would be to cut out that extra language and just keep it at, if they attack, bite, attempt to bite a human being or other domestic animal or livestock, with the exception of fowl. And then the part where they are engaged for fighting on purpose.
Is that, Mr. Meisner?
Well, let's finish this discussion. On that section.
Okay. It sounds like you would like to return it to council and have it, or to our legal counsel and have it come back, changed?
What's the purpose of this? Why are we doing this? Who requested it? Ashley, or?
No, your municipal prosecutor. It started with a conversation between your municipal prosecutor, our office, and the municipal judge, and the chief.
For a vicious dog?
to fix the current definition. It's not to add it, it's to fix the current definition in the code.
Would you like to approach and discuss this,
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Chief Harvey?
So Mayor, members of council, the request for the revision of the ordinance was actually, there were some pieces of the ordinance that were in conflict with, I believe, state statute. I'm not sure exactly what that piece is, and maybe the city attorney can illuminate us on that. But one of the concerns that we did have is the existing definition as it stood. We had fights between dogs that wouldn't necessarily qualify the dog as being able to be cited. And so we did have some instances where the code didn't cover a dog biting another dog, and then actually would lead to fights between humans as a result of that, because there was no method of recourse. But I believe the actual impetus for it did come from a review by the city prosecutor, that there were portions of it that were, I believe, not compliant.
The current definition in the code today only addresses dog bites on humans. That does not mirror state law, which allows for dogs attacking other types of animals, including fowl, under state law. So it wasn't, she could not cite a dog for biting another dog. Sure, her hands were tied because it wasn't a violation of your code. So it was suggested that the definition be changed in order to rectify that.
So if we wanted to reflect the state's code, we wouldn't need such a lengthy definition of a vicious dog. The state code is quite bare. I mean, it's very minimal.
So it could just say.
It could say, I think the state code,
biting another
no dog.
Yeah.
Yes, you can limit it to a dog biting another dog.
Yeah.
Or a human.
Or
The
well,
human's
yeah,
already covered,
But
Okay, I could buy
but not
that.
the dog part. Because the vast majority of our dog bite situations are dog on dog.
And which dog's wrong?
I don't know.
Okay, well, we're devolving
Got a
here.
dog court.
So you,
Well,
Go ahead.
I want to make something, I'm not sure, because under state law, it's any domestic animal. It's not just a dog on dog. I just want to make that clear. Maybe you understood that, but I wasn't sure. So if you said dog on dog, you would be more narrowly defining vicious dog than what's under state law. You are completely permitted to do so.
Relative to the domestic animal, I don't have an issue with the fact that Derek's dog gets into my chicken cage and kills my chicken. I don't have a problem with that. But then where I have a problem is Derek's chickens get out and get in my yard and my dog kills it. I have a problem with
Yes,
that.
but that's an exception to the vicious dog definition. So if the animal that's attacked is at large,
Where does it say that?
it's one of the statutory references in
Number
items
4.
6 and 7 at the end.
It's actually the language, what our ordinance does is references to state, to the Colorado Revised Statutes. I have the language for the affirmative defenses that involve cases like you're talking about. This is the language that says an affirmative defense against your dog being determined to be a vicious dog is when the livestock comes on your property.
Or any animal. If any animal is
Any
at large and it gets attacked by a dog, it's an affirmative defense to the person who owns the dog that did the attacking.
So I have a question.
Mr. Hammer, go ahead.
Yes, my question is, is there some compelling reason that we need the charging language in here against fences, leashes, demonstrating vicious behavior by?
Under state law, this is what it says. It says demonstrating tendencies that would cause a reasonable person to believe the dog may inflict bodily or seriously bodily injury upon or cause death upon any person or domestic animal. So I suspect that charging language is kind of trying to be similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't like it, though, you're free to take it out.
But could we add on that, out of its own environment, if the animal was out of its own environment? Kind of trailing what that
Well, it's already
definition is.
provided in here, if they're on private property, if they're on their, protecting their own private property, then they're okay.
Yeah, if
protecting.
It seems a little conflicting to me, I
If
think.
someone comes into your property and is damaging you or your property and the dog attacks, that's also affirmative defense.
Okay.
So I think and I don't know Councilmember Meisner's dog, but I know my dog, and my dog if there's somebody in the alley, he barks and he'll jump up on the fence, and I think that's what you're getting at, that maybe
It's a vicious animal.
that,
Mine does too.
maybe the city council doesn't want that to be a basis for a criminal charge,
generic.
just that, like the
My
dogs.
dog charged Murphy.
Well, but just talking about a dog that's in an enclosure, I mean, the dog's in an enclosure, and so I think what council's leaning towards is maybe that's a little too low of a threshold to bring a vicious dog case.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. Ms. Cochran?
Because it says on the second line, public or private property. So I think what Dolly's trying to say is, it's one thing if you're, your dog's in its yard and it's charging the fence. It's another thing if you're out walking down Main Street and the dog is lunging at the end of its lead and vicious, trying to bite or whatever. So I think it would be nice to have kind of, when it's in its yard, it's exempt from those behaviors. But in a public setting,
And I know it states it further down. It just seems a little conflicting in this paragraph right here, is all I'm saying.
We would probably argue that, as Councilmember Meisner said, both either in a private or a public setting, it's too nuanced and too generic to really apply. We probably would recommend taking it out. It's too subjective. Because your dog pulls on a leash in a public place, it now constitutes being aggressive or vicious. That's a stretch.
I can't take my dog
Yeah,
somewhere.
you know,
Have a vicious dog.
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting all,
We're making this
maybe
harder
this is
than
a
it needs to
discussion that you should have on your own after reviewing this and come back with what you'd like to have, whether you want more teeth in it or not, so to speak.
We already had that, and said less teeth, and it came back with a minor change.
Yeah, it didn't have.
I'm
So
serious,
we
Mayor.
could, well,
Now is the time to have the public discussion, is it
All right.
not?
so we could see, like I said, I would like to make a motion that we delete or which repeatedly charges against offense in an attempt to attack or charges to the end of its lead in an attempt to attack or aggressively threatens by charging, baring its teeth, growling, snapping, or otherwise demonstrates vicious behavior toward a human being or other domestic animal or livestock with the exception of fowl.
Mr. Arquez?
Mr. Mayor and Council, this subject right now is at 2 points. One, we either table it so the attorney can look at everything that everybody has said that concerns them of that, or let's make a motion to pass the ordinance and then either pass it or fail it.
well, that's what she's trying to
More discussion isn't going to solve the problem that we're looking for. All we're doing is adding to it.
Well-
And I'm not disregarding what people wanted to say to add, everything they wanted to say to add. But if we're going to continue that route, then let's table this, send it back to the attorney, and let them redo it.
Okay, Ms. Smith, did you make the motion deleting?
I made a motion to delete that phrase.
Okay. Ms. Smith had made,
Where did she stop? I'm sorry. but-
I stopped at or livestock with the exception to fowl. So then it continues, so then it would continue again at or engages in or is it harbored primarily or in part for the purpose of fighting, that would remain.
Second?
made and second. Any discussion on that? Does everybody understand that? Any discussion?
May I offer an amendment? I would also propose deleting attempts to bite, which is in the line before where your deletion starts.
So he has to bite?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Do you allow that amendment to your
No,
motion?
attempts to bite?
Yeah.
Will you-
Attacks or
Yeah, I
bites.
would leave in, I mean, if a dog actually attacks or bites, but I would delete out the language attempts to bite.
Or attempts to bite?
Or attempts to bite. Okay, so that's included in my motion.
Okay, so we have a second then. She's amending her motion. Do we need a second on that, or we just
No, just do it.
just do it?
So we're just voting to amend the ordinance, not pass the ordinance.
And it will come back on the second reading, or do we have to read it on the first reading again?
Well, this
We
is
haven't
just an
started to
amendment.
pass.
We haven't even passed the ordinance. This is just to amend
Okay,
it.
all right. Let's call a roll then.
Councilmember Cochran? Aye. Councilmember Gonzalez?
Aye.
Councilmember Hamrick?
Aye.
Councilmember
No.
Jaquez? Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Turner?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith?
Aye.
Okay, so that will come back for a second reading and the modifications that we
That
recommend.
was not first reading, Mayor. was only a
was a
modification to
discussion.
paragraph K.
So now I'd like to make a motion
Oh,
that
okay.
we approve ordinance number 25 on series of 2018 concerning vicious dogs,
As amended?
as amended.
As amended.
Second?
Who seconded? Ms. Gonzalez second. Any discussion on that? Mr. Meisner?
Item number 3, Madam Attorney. It doesn't say property. Is that covered somewhere?
Number 4 is property.
Number 3 is vehicle.
So if you're parked at the grocery store and your dog's in the car.
Right, I understand that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, 4
I think, okay.
It's also covered by the affirmative defenses, so if someone enters your property.
I was trying to read that and listen, and I can't do
Sure,
two
I
things.
understand.
I can barely walk and chew gum.
Okay, does anybody else want to chime in here, or can we go on?
We're good.
That's the discussion. We're at the second, it's been second. Would you call a roll, please?
Councilmember Cochran?
Aye.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Aye.
Councilmember Hamrick?
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez?
No.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Turner?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith?
Aye.
Okay, number 11. Let's move on to discussion of number 11, and then if Cassandra is still here, we will call you up, but let's have our Community Director of Economic Development, Ryan Stevens, do a presentation for us. Ryan?
All right, thank you, Mayor and members of council. Going to give a little background here regarding the parking lot between Centennial Park and Veterans Park. Back in 1999, the city and the Royal Gorge Route Railroad signed an agreement to lease the depot to the railroad, and in that agreement, the railroad was to contribute up to $35,000 for a public-private partnership to pave the parking lot there between Centennial Park and Veterans Park. I know we've had some questions about the use of that parking lot, especially during special events. Staff commissioned a study from WGI, which is a parking management specialist, to look at that lot off of 3rd Street. And the results from that study were some possible recommendations to add additional signage, informing the public that it is a city-owned parking lot, possibly charge a parking fees during peak utilization, impose time limits for this lot, or possibly even a permitting system. In the short term, there are no parking issues with this lot except with special event days, which is about a dozen days or less throughout the year. WGI's recommendation was that there's better coordination between event coordinators and organizers and the railroad to best accommodate all patrons that would be utilizing that lot. During this last event with the Sons of Italy Italian Festival, staff worked to coordinate and be an intermediary between the event organizer and the railroad. And for future events, staff would recommend direct coordination between the event organizers and the railroad, with staff acting as a facilitator. We'd recommend that those meetings took place 4 to 6 weeks prior to the event, and that there should also be a follow-up meeting after the event to debrief and make sure that, see what worked and what issues could be improved.
Council, any questions of Mr. Stevens? Okay, then I'd like to,
Mr. Mayor?
yes, Ms. Turner?
So my understanding is we don't currently have any lease agreement with the railroad for that lot, is that correct?
It expired.
Right.
For which lot?
For Lot 3,
Lot
which is
3.
the lot we're talking about. That's the one that that we have the report on.
And that's
That's-
west of 4th Street.
That's the large lot.
West.
When you, yes, yeah, on the right-hand side there, when you come in off of 4th.
Right.
Anyone else? Then, if not, I'd like to call Cassandra Grow. And friend? I'm assuming she's your friend, or she's just tagging along with you here?
That way, if I lose my train of thought, she can come in. But good evening, ladies and gentlemen of council. I am here this evening due to my interest in where the Royal Gorge Routes train parking actually is. I was under the impression that the large parking lot between Veterans and Centennial Park was a public parking lot. However, recently signs have been placed at the entrances of the parking lot that state that particular parking lot is the train's main parking lot. And you'll see that in all of the photos that you have in front of you. Blossom has never had any parking issues in that area during our Run Blossom race, Blossoms in the Park craft fair, live entertainment, or our Cluster Duck event until the year 2015. In 2015, train staff blocked the eastern side parking lot across from Veterans Park, and they were charging people to park there. We did immediately bring that to the then city clerk's attention, and as a result, there were no other issues or blockages in 2016. In 2017, the train staff only had their area blocked off, and to my knowledge, they were not charging anyone to park there. And when I say their area, I'm talking about the area outlined in their expired original 1999 lease that was updated in 2004 and expired in 2009. The train simply just wanted to ensure that their patrons had parking. We definitely understand that need for them, and they agreed to leave the public parking area alone and only police the area outlined in their lease. In 2018, however, at the first multidiscipline Blossom planning meeting that we have every year with the city, we were assured that there would never be an issue like that again, especially in that big parking lot. But when Blossom Saturday arrived, as you'll see in the photos in front of you, the train had every single public parking lot blocked with signs that read train employees and guests only. All others would be towed. So I'm just here seeking clarification on who the person is responsible for handling the train interests in that public parking lot, as well as the tourists and the citizens and our several events that go on over there. We have printed out, again, all the pictures for you, and I apologize that they're not in order. When I uploaded them, they were. When I picked them up, they weren't. So I just simply ran out of time to fix those for you, but we can answer any questions on those pictures. And again, we're just trying to seek clarification because all of whether it's Blossom, FAR, the Italian Festival, the Whitewater Festival, the Orchard of Hope Foundation, the Farmers Market, all of these people are having issues with that parking lot. We're all volunteers, and we do what we do because we love this community. And we're always trying to make sure we are coming up with ways to make it great so our citizens can come and enjoy what we have in our great little city.
Okay.
And it seems to me that the city is allowing the train to dictate who gets to park in a public parking lot and who doesn't.
Okay, would you just stand by? We'll have Mr. Croce approach and talk to us.
I stood in the background. I'm also on the Blossom Committee, but I'm also one of the organizers for the Italian Festival. And we moved from the Macon Plaza to Veterans Park this year, and we didn't exactly know how that'd go, but it went really well. We did have cooperation. Mr. Stevens was very good about helping take the lead on helping us address the parking issue. We expect to grow, and hopefully we can have access to more parking in the future. By splitting the parking lot up the way it was this year for our Italian Festival, we had one area that we were allowed to park in and another area that we were not allowed to park in. And it means you have a couple extra people dealing with the parking issues. I know Rick Romano spent a good part of the day sitting out on the street answering questions of why we can't park wherever we want to park. We expect to grow, and we'd like to see the parking addressed the same way as we would for Blossom, the same way that several groups that Cassie has listed. The other thing is that I think the city has invested a lot of money in 2 parks there and probably will continue to invest money. And I think if we're going to encourage people to come to that area, whether it's for farmers market or whether it's for an event, we ought to provide parking for them. I know the folks that ride the train need adequate parking also, but I'm not sure that anybody should have specific access to that parking, and if it should just be, if you ride the train, you walk the same way as somebody that attends a festival or some other event in the park. So I guess I would advocate open parking for whoever.
Okay, thank you, John. Any questions of council? Does everybody have the pictures and everything? Mr. Meisner, did you? Go ahead. No, really, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Maybe to Ryan or to Tony. Did the lease, which obviously is irrelevant, did it specify a number of spaces?
No.
So it was just
Just
shared?
generically states that as long as it does not unreasonably interfere with previously existing recreational social uses. So it's not the best language in the world. It probably would have been better if it indicated how many spaces it could set aside for itself, but it didn't. I think it was language that was in consideration of the $35,000 contribution some 20 years ago. And as I indicated, the lease has expired, and we have not brought it back to you because we have a pending sale of property, and until that's completed, then we wanted to bring back to you a resolution on parking in this Lot 3.
Any other questions? Ms. Gonzalez?
So, with this scenario that Cassie has put together, 2015, there was an issue with parking, 2016, not an issue, 2017, not an issue, and I can concur that I did notice 3 different times that I've reported that parking has been blocked off.
Yes.
Because I was a volunteer at one of those events, and I had to walk quite a ways.
Yes.
And there were 3 rows blocked off. Now, how does it, I don't know who to direct this question to, but how does it go from no issue to issues every week, or issues at every event?
Matt, I can only speak for the last 2 years. I don't know who made the commitment in 2018. I wasn't involved directly with that event. Another staff member was, who's no longer here, what the commitment was. But clearly, my understanding was the train was not informed, and that's a fundamental requirement to make sure all the parties are communicating and know what's going on, and that's the role that Ryan plays. We also retained this outside consultant so we could look at it objectively from a third party. I think their advice is fairly standard, having been involved with lots of events in multiple communities. When you have a premium demand for parking, charge for those particular times, whether it's a football game in Denver or a special event. I think that would resolve a lot of this. We're fortunate we do have parking very close to the proximity of both Veterans Park and Centennial Park, and we're adding to that inventory as we speak. So I think, if someone doesn't mind walking 5 minutes to avoid paying $5, that's their prerogative. But if they want 50-yard line parking, there should be a price associated with that when demand exceeds supply.
But that's not my question.
Yeah.
My question was, how do we go from no issues to issues at every event?
I can't speak to that because I'm relatively new.
Well, I noticed there's a representative from the train here.
Yes.
Can we?
We have Rich Millard, who's the new general manager for the Royal Gorge Route Railroad, and in preparation for the Italian Festival, Rich and I sat down. I know Rich might have a different philosophy than previous management. So, Rich, would you mind addressing?
Thank you, Ryan, Mayor and Council. I also have Glenn Hayes here with me, the accounting manager with the railroad, and I am the general manager. This is my second year of service with the railroad, and I can say with enthusiasm that the railroad loves the community as well, and it is definitely our intent to work very closely with the we know the festivals, as they are growing, represent a very important part of the fabric of the community, and we definitely appreciate that. 2018 has been our 20th year of operation. We started back in 1998, and we have grown by leaps and bounds. So I think maybe to partially answer your question, maybe some of the reasons that there has been some more focus on this issue is that both the festivals, due to their success, and the railroad, due to our success, are attracting more people. And so we definitely are looking into that. And I think with the Italian Festival, we did have involvement. We were told Ryan facilitated a great meeting, as was mentioned, and we had several opportunities to get together with the organizers and discuss how the parking situation would go. And as far as I was concerned, because I actually stayed around in the evenings on that weekend since it was a new festival, and I just kind of wanted to see. I think it went very well. I could not tell that there was very many people that didn't have a place to park at all. And, during the peak season, we do haul an awful lot of people, especially our 12:30 train in the middle of the day is frequently seeing numbers up close to 500 passengers for one train. And that's something kind of new that we're actually dealing with. So we, fortunately their festival, in that case, a lot of their visitorship happened later in the day. And so as soon as we saw a need for, not a need for our own parking, we actually, we have chained off our particular parking lot that we actually own, which is just, east of the 3rd Street Drive coming into our back east parking lot. And we took those chains down and we let people park there, which is a lot closer actually to the festival than the lot number 3. And we're more than happy to do that as long as we know that our guests have ample parking. And I do agree with the statement, that the people that are coming to these festivals should have a place to park. We also, it's very crucial, passengers that are arriving to board our trains have paid hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars for tickets, depending on how many people are riding. And it is very crucial to our business model that they do have a place to park. And yes, we have some of the signs that had been up had been faded, and we did relabel them, and it helped to identify where our main parking lot and auxiliary parking lots were, just to help passengers, more wayfinding signs, know where that they should be able to park and get to the station. We do have a very clear-cut way when we do have those big festivals that we have worked with in the past to designate some rows of that lot number 3 as passenger parking for the train and some rows as guest parking that are attending the festivals. And I think that going forward, as we continue to grow, as Ryan suggested, that a closer relationship and prior meetings with the festival organizers and directors, we can have our parking, we can have our staff out there, they can have their staff out there, and we can work together to make sure that everybody has plenty of parking. But it is very crucial that we do have some designated spaces for our guests to park for the train ride.
Ms. Cochran?
So does the Royal Gorge Railroad currently have parking signs dedicated to your customers in a city-owned lot?
We, yes, we have signs that label the various parking areas for our guests.
And who gave you the permission to put those signs up?
Those signs have been there for quite some time.
I don't think you answered your question. Do you know who gave you authority to put the signs on public property?
No, that predates my employment.
So were those part of the lease agreement that expired 9 years ago?
I mean, to me, some of these signs are look newer.
They
I
are
don't
newer.
remember
Yeah,
them
I said,
before.
as I mentioned, we replaced signs that were existing with more readable signs, but the signs that were replaced said the same thing. There weren't any new signs put up that designated any parking that had not already been there.
So my next question is, are you currently paying the city for any lots to designate any parking spaces as your own? Are you paying the city any money to designate and block off parking as your own? Reserve parking as your own?
No.
No, we're not.
No, okay. So,
I have a question, though. The lease that expired 9 years ago, is that referring to Lot 3?
Does, yes.
yes, and that's where that's in these photos, that's where those reserved spots are blocked off with Royal Gorge, with your
Yeah, now
signage saying.
during events, we do block off rows for guest parking, and then we leave other rows available for event parking.
Okay, and then the follow-up question to that was, who gave you permission to do that?
That's the way we've always had the priority parking for those lots.
So for 3 years, for 15, 16, and 17, it wasn't done.
I don't know that to be the case. I've been there since 2008, and it's my understanding that every year for the Blossom, we've kind of roped off those same spots. And I think recently, like, and some newer additions with the, like the Whitewater Festival, that one called for it. You know, but I think as Rich and the other folks were talking about, I just think as these festivals become bigger, we've found that, you know, there's just.
Actually, I think Whitewater had a lower enrollment, or had lower participation this year.
What's that?
Whitewater had lower participation this year?
Because they couldn't find parking.
It was really busy.
Because they couldn't
for-
park.
Yeah, and maybe it's difficult to tell, because I mean, the train certainly wasn't, you know, and there was.
Sure.
You know, just the need
But
to spots.
but to that is, who gave you permission to take those spots as your own? Why can't it be first come, first serve?
Well, I guess just the
In a city
understanding
property.
that, you know, that there was 35,000 paid by the railroad in '99 for the use of that lot.
For how long? When did the lease expire?
For the term of the lease.
Right.
And the lease expired?
It's been expired.
Is that different than the
Mr. Mayor.
lease that
Well,
was
the-
Yes,
for
mid-
Santa Fe
mid-
Depot? Is that a different lease?
It's the same lease.
So that lease does have, if I'm not mistaken, 5 windows of renewal. And we have renewed every year for that. And the
No.
current lease doesn't expire, and I just sent a letter in not too long ago to renew it for its final window from 2019 to 2024.
Okay,
So I'm not under the impression that the lease is expired.
so I feel like maybe I'm getting misinformation somewhere? Is their lease current?
Our lease is definitely current.
Can I hear that from city staff?
I'd have to check on that. I'm not
Yeah,
sure about that.
I don't have it in our Laserfish system, so we'd have to find a hard copy of it somewhere.
Are they paying us?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
they are paying us.
Yes, we are
Yes.
paying.
Okay.
I
We
thought
pay
you
our
just
bills.
said you weren't paying us, though. Now I'm so confused.
I'm
Well, they're-
confused.
Well-
They're paying their Santa Fe Depot agreement,
Lease.
their lease, and they're under the impression that the Santa Fe lease still includes the
Yes.
parking agreement.
Not,
That's-
it at least includes priority parking in lot number 3.
Right.
Well, it includes
Correct.
non-exclusive use in that parking lot. And so my question then is, when you're blocking off the lot and you're not allowing others to use it, to me, that doesn't fit.
We're
not
not,
blocking off
we're
the
not blocking
entire
off the entire lot. We're blocking off
Parts of it.
specific roads.
But you are making parts of it
Yes.
exclusive to your business.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that that's in keeping with the terms of the lease that we have. So, and this is the first time hearing that we had a current lease. I asked this question of staff about 4 weeks ago and was told that we do not have a current lease with them.
Because of the pending sale.
Well, I had been told it had not been renewed. The last time it had been renewed was 2004. So if that's not correct, I think we need to clarify that, because there are expenses under that lease if there is a current
All I
lease.
can speak to is the research we did at my request several months ago, and there was no evidence that it had been extended past the date that you're talking about. We can find no evidence in the city records of that.
Okay, Mr. Hammer.
I'd like to say something here, and what I'd like to say is that when the city permits special events, the special event has a permit. They come before us, they ask for a liquor license. There are other permitting functions the city executes for those special events. And so my question is, why can't, as a matter of policy, the city administrator directs city staff to make sure there's a parking plan that's agreeable to all parties? If there's not a parking plan that can be agreed to by all parties, it needs to come back before city council as part of the special event request to discuss whatever may need to happen. But it seems to me, I mean, this is a case where we truly will all want to get along here. And so I think that if that one way forward is that if by policy the city implements a parking plan requirement for for our festivals so that it's clear. At least it'll be then on black and white. At least if there's disagreement, we have a chance to resolve that. I'm not sure that we want to, be drawing bright lines here necessarily, but I think that this is a case where we really all want to get along, I think.
And we have done exactly that. We have a draft of a proposed event permit that includes a parking management requirement, which in the past did not occur. And that's why Ryan took the step this year to ensure that there was coordination with the Italian Festival, because I know in the past that's been part of the problem, a lack of communications on all parties. And so I think we can avoid that because we think there is sufficient parking out there that we can ensure that all the parties' principal interests are met. Clearly, some people will have to park away from that area, and if the demand increases, as the consultants recommended, the council may want to consider a paid parking situation for special occasions.
And we have dedicated quite a bit of our, quite a bit of our resources last year, especially during these events. 3 or 4 people in radio contact between our different areas of parking. If we have something open up over here, we direct passengers over there to park. We try to fill up on those busy days. We do make an effort to fill up our own parking lot first to make sure that we leave as many spots open for guests attending these events, and we will continue to do that. We definitely want to work very closely with the various festivals that are there throughout the year. And I think going forward, as Tony and Ryan have both mentioned, if we have a laid out per plan and we get together with the festivals, that there is plenty of parking to go around. With the train, obviously it peaks at different specific times. We know a lot of the festival goers, and it's great. They'll park and they'll stay there for a long period of time as they're visiting the festival. Some as much as I've seen cars there for 5, 6 or more hours. And so our guests, unfortunately, if they're riding the 12:30 train, they're not going to get there at 8 o'clock in the morning just to secure a parking space so they can ride the train at 12:30.
Okay, Mr. Arquez?
Yeah, piggyback on what John was saying, I think the one thing we need to do now, and it'll help maybe resolve a lot of the problems we're looking at, is we need to, first of all, get a hold of that original lease that was signed way back when, that apparently someone said expired. They've said they've renewed it as the contract says. So, because we don't know that in that original lease, there might have been a certain amount of percentage of spaces that allowed the railroad from that. So the key to this is, let's locate that original lease. If the city can't find it, if you folks still have it, you can get it to the city. And once we have that, then we can work in unison with the people that have the special events and everybody else, to come to maybe a workable solution for everybody. But the lease is the key issue to this thing here. What does it say on expiration and automatic renewals?
Okay, Ms. Smith?
I have 2 things. One, it's been mentioned a couple of times, paying for parking. The specialist that we had to do our study had a recommendation for nonprofits on special events to be able to accept donations to be able to park in our public parking lot. And I guess I want to put a feeler out there. Is that something that between the train and the nonprofits, an idea that you're even willing to entertain?
I'd like to make a comment on that. With all due respect, Tony, I don't think we want to start charging people to come to events or to go ride the train if we have public parking. I guess a solution, since I'm one of the people that would like to see more parking, I'd like to offer up something too, that maybe that there are a couple of options that the city can look at. I know Ryan is pretty aggressive in terms of how he thinks about community events, and he's been very supportive of what we've done. But the bottom line is we need to have more parking, I think. Our event could grow. We had 3,200 people this year attend, and 500 was Friday night, and then the balance was on Saturday. And a lot of them do stay, but perhaps coming up with some parking in the area and some sort of a shuttle or something that, that could help people get to these events and still get to where they need to, whether they're taking a shuttle to ride the train or taking a shuttle or something to attend one of our events. If we're going to have parks and we're going to have the train, then I think we need to do something to get more parking.
Okay.
And figure out
So
how to
we
share
are
that.
actively looking for opportunities to create more parking in nearby areas. That is high on our priority list. Ryan, did you have something you want to add to that?
I didn't want to interrupt you. I wanted to address Councilmember Jaquez's comments, but after your...
Okay, so we are actively looking for that, and definitely that is a high priority. And that kind of leads me to a second thing. I'm a little bit worried at Centennial Park. I was trying to look at our September 22nd event and what the parking looked like there at Centennial Park with our Grivalicious and our doing the new pavilion celebration. And our parking was full there too, and even that East Road that was full with cars as well. And for access we had a fire truck that came in for a medical case. And I'm a little bit worried as we are looking forward to our 2019 budget, we are talking about taking out that East Road. And that may just make the problem worse if we take away even more parking and may limit some access there. I've talked to Tony about it, and I'd like, this is a little bit of a side note, but I'd like to take the master plan for Centennial Park back to the original committee and revisit that and see if they still want to pursue to the next phase 2 in that direction as far as creating a soccer field and whatnot, just to make sure that we are considering our resources most adequately and meeting the needs of our
Okay.
community, because that money could be spent somewhere else, like creating more parking
Okay.
in another area.
Ms. Turner?
I just wanted to kind of give my position on how I think we should be dealing with this lot. I think if it's a public parking lot, I think it should just be a public parking lot. I don't think we should be allowing or forcing people to split up the lot as a private side agreement between a nonprofit and a business. If the community owns this lot and it's a public parking lot for 350 some days a year, it should just be a public parking lot every day, would be my position on that.
And I agree with your comments. That's why it's so important to get that original lease contract, because that's gonna establish what we can and cannot do. Because if they have a legal right, according to the lease, we can't throw that aside.
And Councilmember Jaquez, we do have the original lease agreement. It sounds like we don't have copies of the renewals.
A question for the train. I know that you guys are pursuing acquiring properties close to the river. Is there, as you move forward and those potential investments, are there opportunities for you to create more parking specifically for your business?
I would definitely say yes. I mean, parking is just a big topic with our business. As we move forward with anything that we would add, parking would definitely be a main concern that we would certainly attempt to address.
I have a question. In some of these pictures, you can see that there's some empty cars or, what are they called?
Conics.
Containers?
Storage. Taking up parking.
C-Vans.
What's that?
C-Van is a name for them.
C-Van,
Connex
okay.
is a name for them.
So that's certainly less than ideal scenario for us. We lost our maintenance facility at 309 South 11th Street last December.
Okay.
We just had a lot of stuff and we needed to put it somewhere on property that we own. And believe me, that was in no way our best alternative. It was just the only spot that we had to put our stuff.
So how many parking spots do you think that's taking up? 25?
Not many. And those will be, we are working to develop our new maintenance facility up at Parkdale on the other end of our line.
Okay.
And those will be going away within the next year as soon as this property is developed further.
Okay.
That was just a temporary solution, but yes. Not a whole lot of spaces, but, every space counts for
Right.
sure. And once again, that is our lot, and we have been always more than happy, especially these festivals in the evening and the afternoon when our peak ridership is down. opening that lot up for them so they can have use of it as well.
Sure, and that's not the question. We absolutely appreciate that. I think what we're questioning is when we have our peak times and you have your peak times,
Right.
we're kind of trying to share something that doesn't fit.
Well, and I think as Tony said, at least for now, there definitely is enough space to go around. It's just going to be a more concerted effort to communicate between us and the festivals as to how that will happen. And we are definitely willing to work with them as much as we need to make it come off as well as it possibly can. You know, the railroad's been trying to buy that depot since it first started in 1999, and through difficulty with previous city councils throughout the years, which no need to get into. I mean, we're grateful for the opportunity to finally be able to purchase 2 of those 3 pieces of property. And yes, as we own them and have the funds to do so, we will be developing further parking to accommodate our growth on those lots as well. So we definitely have plans for that going forward. So I think what we're looking at right now is just, a short-term measure over the coming years until that does happen to coexist with our partners in doing the festivals and work closely with them to make sure that we're all taken care of.
Okay.
Now, would you coordinate that through Ryan?
Ryan actually did a great job facilitating with the Italian Festival.
Okay.
That was actually the first
Good.
time he had done so, and it worked out very well. I know we have, like I said, my time here is a lot shorter than like Glenn's, but we have had various dealings with some of the other festivals, but not to that level. And I think that's definitely where we need to go forward is, specifically mapping that out, knowing what our peak times are based around our train departure times, and then releasing those spaces that we need, including spaces, again, in our own lot that we own for the festivals when we don't need them.
Okay. Any other comments to council? Where do we go from here? We just want to go ahead and,
Well, as we mentioned, we'll be bringing to the council approval of this new special events permit. It's fairly exhaustive. A key element is a parking management plan required so we can avoid situations like this. And actually, this one worked out reasonably well because it was coordinated, and that will be the requirement of future events. And we'll follow up on this missing lease extension because we haven't seen it. So if they have a copy of it, we'd like to see it because we're assuming the agreement's expired. And we were waiting for this pending sale to be completed to bring the matter back to the council to come up with a new agreement for the future, which still might be necessary
And
to
just
deal
a
with this issue.
Small point of clarification. I heard someone mention that during one year we were charging for parking, and I just want to make it really clear that we have never, ever charged for parking in any of our lots. There are some adjacent landowners. I know the people that own the marijuana shop there have charged. So, and it's sometimes hard to tell who's who when there's people out there in parking vests collecting money, but the railroad has never, ever charged for parking, and we don't ever hopefully intend to.
okay. Last comments? John, go ahead.
Just one more comment. It did work well this year for the Italian Festival, and we appreciate the cooperation and the coordination. I just want to say that I think the city needs to look hard at parking in the future because we had maybe 2,800 people there over the course of the day. If we had 4,000 or 5,000 people there, which we hope to grow every year, we wouldn't have fit. It would have been a bigger problem than that. And we had golf carts that we borrowed to shuttle people back and forth if they had a problem, a handicap or something like that, or that sort of thing. But I do think the city, and I think there are a lot of people that'd be willing to work with you to try and come up with some alternatives.
Okay. What about the city parking lot? Do people use that?
Yes. Yes.
If they want to risk trying to get across Highway 50.
Correct.
Should we bring back the trolley?
I think the trolley would be a good idea for future events over there. Primarily when we're doing Run Blossom or Blossoms in the Park and things like that, at least on Blossom weekend, this back city lot, we try to reserve for the vendors so they can park close enough to restock their wares. So
Okay.
that's primarily what that, and it's full by Friday afternoon.
Okay, when I was over at the Italian Festival, when I went over the bridge, there's a gravel lot there between your terminal and the river, and there was nothing in that. Is that not usable for parking?
That's part of the land that's owned by.
The rafting company.
The marijuana shop doesn't own the land, but what's his name?
No?
Are you talking about?
No, directly in front of the
tank
terminal,
cars?
directly
Yeah, that's what I
between the
thought.
terminal and the river, there's a gravel
Right,
area.
and that's mainly, we do keep that access open for rafting takeout.
That's a rafting takeout area.
So, and we do like to make sure that buses can make a complete loop through there. But yeah, we've certainly packed that lot as tight as we can and still keeping the access through there. So we
I didn't
use
see any
that.
cars there, so, okay. So are they part of that conversation? The rafting companies that may want to use that lot?
It's in the lease.
Yeah, I think for bigger events, we definitely want to
Okay.
make sure that we're incorporating all users of those
Yeah,
lots.
And would the city like to see, residents like to see us cut those trees down on the west side of Centennial or Veterans Park to put parking there?
You mean on 4th Street?
No, on First Street, behind the tourist cabin, there's a really nice shaded park with trees and everything. Should we cut all those down and we can put up a parking lot? I think that's a song. Anyway, but
Jefferson Airplane.
I'm just sort of kidding.
Yeah.
But that's a big area. You could probably put 30 to 50 cars in there, but you'd lose the trees. I'm not running.
Might be a
for- I
good
mean,
question for the survey next year.
Oh,
It's
my
valid
gosh.
consideration.
Sure,
We've talked about
sure,
it.
okay. All right.
Just to go back and answer one of Ashley's questions earlier, and to address what one of Tony's ideas on the, you asked how we felt about charging people to park. And I know that, at least for Blossom, we would not be okay with that. We really try to keep a lot of the events that we hold over in those areas as free events for our community, so they can come and enjoy things without having to pay an arm and a leg. And so I would not be okay with charging people to park over there for a free event that we're doing to make our community as great as we can and putting our best foot forward. I don't think I would agree with that.
Okay, well,
I mean, I would
that's why I
definitely
asked
want
the
to think
question. I
about
wanted
it,
to
but-
know what your feelings were, because it was a recommendation that was
Yeah.
given to us.
Yeah, I wouldn't agree with it either. I don't think it's
Well,
necessary.
I kind of don't agree, because if you go to anywhere, you can go do free events, but you're paying the city to park.
Right.
You know, you can go walk up and down Tejon, but you're going to pay to park. You can go to Telluride and pay $3 to park, but you can ride the gondola for free all the way over. So I don't know. I kind of feel
Yeah.
differently about that.
We haven't gotten there yet. Once
No,
we
we
get
haven't
above
gotten
there.
100,000 people, maybe we have that
True.
discussion, okay?
Okay, true.
Dorito.
All right, let's
One
quit
last
beating
comment.
this to death. All right. Mr. Meisner.
No comment.
No, go ahead, comment.
He's beaten down.
Okay.
Do it, Greg.
I just wanted to see if I could make one comment on this.
Yes.
As a volunteer for the Blossom Festival and some of the other events, as a business owner, as a parking lot owner, I'm aware of all of the challenges that each party involved faces. And we didn't spend 35, we spent over 100,000 buying our parking lot. And the other day, one of my staff and I were getting out of our cars in the parking lot, and a car pulled in, and they parked in the parking lot, and they jumped out, and they went to our adjoining new business down there. And my staff asked me, they said, "Are you going to chase them out?" And I said, "No, I'm not going to chase them out." He said, "Well, why? Our customers can't park there." I said, "Because they're their customer today, they're going to be our customer tomorrow." And that's the problem with becoming like a parking Gestapo and overseeing the parking lot is when you remove it from just a public parking area, when it's a perceived public parking area, you are very off-putting to the customers that are potential tomorrow customers. And that is why I would urge the council, and that's why I urged it earlier, to just make it an open parking. It is unfortunate, and I understand their challenge, but I also understand that a lot of my clientele is elderly and have a hard time walking, and I can't go out in my angle parking and say, "No, you do not park here," and walk across the street. I'm not allowed to do that because it's public parking.
Okay.
So,
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you all. Appreciate the conversation. We will move on to another exciting issue. discussion of, number 12 is discussion of East Ridge Campground camping fee. Could we have comment from the administrator?
Yes, I wasn't here when you initiated this discussion, but we provided you a matrix of what some government agencies are charging for parking on sites similar to what we currently have, and then some private campsites which probably have more amenities. We're currently contemplating 21 camping sites at this location at Royal Gorge Park. We do not charge, but with the proposed amenities and enhancements we're going to make, we probably believe that we should charge, and also to be fair to the private sector, because effectively, you know, we're allowing people not to utilize the private campsites because they're getting a free site. And so we think we should close that loophole down, but still be reasonable. We see the sweet spot probably somewhere between $18 and $20. So just want to get feedback from the council to believe whether that's appropriate for us to charge after this year when we make these improvements, and if this is the price that you want to charge.
Okay, council? Ms. Gonzalez?
So for the $18 to $20, what amenities are they getting at the campground?
Well, we'd be improving the overall campground experience with the fire pits. There'll be fencing, upgraded bathroom facilities. Picnic tables. There'll be also some, John had a really good idea, because we were struggling with, if we're going to charge, someone has to be able to collect and to make sure that, you know, the honor system is in effect. He had a really good idea, and we want to credit him with that. I think we can contract, hopefully, with the security at the bridge to just pop on over, like around 6 o'clock, when people largely are checked in, make sure they've made their payments, make sure everything's orderly, people are behaving, following the rules, and if there is a disturbance there, they're 2 minutes away, versus that area is in technically the county. It would require a sheriff's department officer to come up, which I could take, half hour, an hour. So we think, we're working with the bridge, we could create a win-win scenario.
And how many days are they allowed to camp?
That's
2 weeks?
Yeah, that's our
2 days.
proposal is 2 weeks, but again, we could come back with a more definitive set of policies and rules that the council can review and approve later this year.
I think 2 weeks is kind of standard
Yeah.
for state campgrounds.
Mr. Meisner?
Go ahead, John.
Mr. Hamlin?
I was just going to say, in terms of the fee that's charged, there's nothing more irksome than having an $18 parking fee and only having 20s. It's much better to have a $20.
Leaves room for a tip.
Give a tip.
Yeah, leaves room for a tip.
Mr. Meisner?
Relative to the parking fee, I would suggest that we're comparable to the surrounding businesses, because that was my concern. I'm really not much concerned about West Cliff and
Sure.
Wetmore and those areas, but I'm concerned about, there's a number of campgrounds up in that area that would be, I don't want to be a competitor to those people.
Well, I think those campgrounds offer some things that ours doesn't, like potable water.
But a free camping site is significant. I mean, we can't offer a free camping site.
Right, correct. I think so.
So do you think a lower fee would be better?
Well, I mean, it looks to me like if you did something in the $20 range, I mean, if you go to 11 Mile, there ain't a whole lot out there. I mean, you got a parking spot and you got a community bathroom and, I mean, there.
$20 is real reasonable.
Oh, is there a dumpster also?
Yeah, there's trash facilities. Yeah.
Yes.
It's not like you got showers and those other things.
Well, I see we have a representative from FAR, is that right? Did you have any comments, or? Oh, I hope you got your money's worth.
Brian.
Great.
And there's Dennis.
Dennis is in line.
Oh, he is? Okay.
I'm Brian Ledoux, not as a representative of FAR, but I do spend a fair amount of time in the Royal Gorge Campground. It is, in addition to state parks, I guess my first thought is don't use Reserve America, is that the $18 campsite with the $10 reserve fee is mind-numbing. But the point with the gorge is what you want to do is really charge a fee that gets the squatters out. mean, that's, I have a log of photos I'd ride through and take pictures. The guy in the blue pickup truck was there all summer long. And you want to get those people out. I'd personally, cut down on trash, keep it low cost. $20 is sort of excessive to me, but the adjacent campgrounds have services. I want minimal services, and so I want less cost. I'll bring my own toilet paper if it's $5 versus $20. So I think that's a market that we should look at, as opposed to people going to, the Echo Land that, they want full service, I don't, that kind of thing. So.
Okay. Any questions for Brian?
Well, I don't know that it's to Brian, but it's where I was going and I lost my train of thought. But you'd mentioned a time frame. There's got to be you're limited to 2 weeks, then you leave for a week and come back for 2 weeks. How do we get through that loophole, or is there?
It's been a problem because we don't have someone up there full-time, and Brian's absolutely right. We do get people up there, some of them are homeless, that just move around, and Rex will go up there on a regular basis, but we can't constantly monitor the situation. And if we had a fee and we had a relationship with security, we could address that kind of problem, because it is a valid issue.
Yeah, but can you address it long-term in terms of if we have a 2-week limitation?
Yes.
That I do 2 weeks and then I'd leave for a week and I come back. How do we?
Well, I think just the fact that they have to pay to be there is the...
Yeah, because right now being free, there's a strong incentive just to be there and be there as long as possible.
Yeah. I think let's not overthink it. I think you need to try that to see what the charging would do. And certainly there's going to be people that's going to figure their way around anything. I don't care what you do. But any other questions of Brian?
Thank you.
No, I have one question. You said $20 seems a bit excessive for that campground, but $5 doesn't? $5?
No, it's essentially a token charge to keep the squatters out. That's the squatters won't stay.
They won't pay that $5
if somebody's
a day.
collecting at least, something every night.
Well, it has to be enough to pay for the service.
I
to
agree.
regulate it.
Yeah.
And we don't want to create, you've raised the issue, an economic disincentive to go to the private campgrounds or facilities very close by, so we don't want to be so low that we're pulling business away from them. We don't want to do that. That's why we thought that $20 was appropriate, because it's fundamentally the same type of campsite that the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Division offers, and we think we're comparable to that.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Dennis, did you have comments?
Yeah, actually, quite a few.
Put him on the clock.
No, I think you're going about this the wrong way. And one of the things, personally, I think there shouldn't be any fee to camp there. And I think it should stay that way. And a little bit of historic perspective on this that I'm guessing most of you don't have is that's been one of the best little secrets in Canyon City for 30 years, is that campground up there. And it's a free campground, and it's a place where people can go when there is no other place to camp. And, this talk about, well, we don't want to compete, or, we need to be competitive, or we don't want to have an advantage over the commercial campgrounds. The fact that you're advertising it is de facto competing with the commercial campgrounds. It's always been an off-the-radar campground. And that's the way it ought to stay. And this idea of a 2-week limit is insane. It should be a 2-day limit. It's, if you look at, and I know because I've paid attention to that campground because I've gone up there a lot over 30 years. And the people that tend to go there are not the people who are, forget the homeless people or the long-term residents. I'm talking about the people who are traveling. They're on vacation, and they're looking for a nifty place to spend the night, and then the next morning they get up and they're on their way, or they spend a day or two there. But there is no reason in the world why anybody should spend 2 weeks up there. 2 days. Serious, I mean, and historically, that's all that's ever been there. Except for recently, and I don't know, he mentioned, you know, I've seen over the winter, there's people that live up there. And you know, and the problem is that there's nobody up there to kick them out, and there's really no rules on how long you can be there. And so, I mean,
I think the rule is 2 weeks, but it's really difficult to kick them out.
yeah.
Does it say 72 hours?
So Dennis, can I say something to what you had said?
Sure.
My daughter, Gabby, loves to camp, and she loves to go to the driest place that she can find to camp. But as a mama, I get a little scared. So this would be an ideal place for her to, I would pay the $20 for her to go and spend the night there so that she could have a dry camping experience, and I would know that she's safe, because she would be paying to have somebody help check on her.
Well, that was funny. It's funny you would say that, because my daughter is a senior in high school this year, and last weekend, she and, I don't know, 5 or 6 of her friends went up there and camped. They just went up, spent the night up there, and came back. And that, I mean, it's the perfect place for kids to go have a night in the woods. You really can't get in any trouble up there. And you know,
Yeah, I'm sure you can.
Well, I'm sure you can.
Depends on what and who you take.
It depends on what kind of trouble you're talking about.
But I'd like to say too, if you want free, just a place to camp and you're traveling and you want a free place to stay overnight, you can stay in the Walmart parking lot. But the city is talking about investing money into this, and there's really no reason for us to put money into something and not see a return of something.
Well, I
Well,
think it's more that, okay, we've made this investment, put it in there, but the people who use it are the ones who should be contributing to maintain it and keep it good. Like when I go to free camping, like if I go to Lake Deweese and it's free, that means the bathrooms are trash, there's no toilet paper, and it's absolutely disgusting. I would rather pay a little bit of money to make sure I had a pleasant camping experience.
Okay.
Well, I struggled with the whole idea of the city investing money to improve a campground and at the same time saying, we don't want to compete with the campgrounds. Because that's
at that
exactly
rate,
what
we're-
you're doing.
But I don't believe at that rate, at $20, we're not competing with
I think
Echo Canyon
$20 is way too high. I agree.
I'd feel more comfortable with
absolutely
15
agree.
myself.
You gotta make
But
change.
$5 is
All right.
maybe reasonable, and I would say at least make it a seasonal thing. You know, if you're going to charge to camp up there, you know, June 15th to August 15th or something, like when the tourists are here.
Memorial Day to Labor Day.
Memorial Day to Labor Day, whatever.
Okay.
And we have the
Let's-
homeless.
Yeah, but then we
Anyhow,
have
I know
the
you guys
home-
want to go,
We-
there's a football game, we've all missed all of it.
There is, isn't there?
Yeah, what is the
But you guys have great kids. My kids won't get anything less than a Holiday Inn. It's just the way it is.
3 stars minimum?
3 stars minimum. Thank you, Dennis. Let's move to a conclusion of some type on this. Can we? So direction to staff, what's it going to be? All right, hearing none, let's. I believe that,
$15
yes,
reasonable?
maybe you should talk about $10.
$12, I think $12.
Then you have to make change.
Oh,
And
15.
I
then
think
you-
15 is a good.
do I hear 18?
I think the
All right.
cost, first of all, look at it there, I think the cost should be able to take care of the maintenance, the people that are going to have to go up there. You've got people that are on salary. If we work out an agreement with the Royal Gorge people to come over, look at that, all of those things need to be taken into consideration when we look at the cost, okay? Because you don't want to say charge $5 and it's costing us $50 to take care of it.
Right now,
we're
So-
charging nothing.
And we can get as close to that. I'm not saying we have to get it exactly. But if, say, our costs come back and say, if you want to do this, the reasonable fee will be $20. Then we can say, okay, we'll make it 15.
Okay, we are going to do improvements, we're going to spend some money, so we're down to what do you want to charge for it and how long do you want them to stay? Those are the 2 questions I want you to each answer. Do you want to do that?
Sure.
You're so terribly excited about this.
Right?
Well, I mean, I agree with Frank that I think before we set a price, we should determine if we're able to contract with the bridge and how much that's going to cost us. Because if it's going to be an outrageous amount of money, maybe the fee won't make up for it, and maybe a fee doesn't make sense in that case, and we don't have that information
Well, and it's the
tonight.
cost not only for security, but the cost to maintain the bathrooms and.
Right.
the
I mean, that's all
cleaning
pieces of
and
it, so I think I'd like to see from staff what they
We
think.
can bring back a
Yeah,
budget
I mean,
for
I
you.
think we probably should just punt that issue for tonight.
Okay.
But I would, as far as the length of stay, I think at least 72 hours.
72 hours.
Okay.
We just, Rex today, in our homeless committee meeting, he said it.
That's what it is at our mountain parks.
in
It's
our mount- He
72.
said mountain parks is
Okay,
72.
real quick, name and real quick.
Fritz, and I'm just here participating, but I think it's irresponsible for you to come up with a price until you go through and find out exactly what it's going to cost for your improvements
Right.
and your operating. So I don't understand why you're still having that discussion.
Well, we just decided we were
Well,
going to.
because we want to, but yeah. So, yeah, we're having that discussion. That's what we're going to. We have directed him, the city administrator, to come up with what the cost would be if it's feasible to have security from the,
Right.
because we don't want to share a police officer up there or our people from Parks and Rec. So you're right. We're going to head that way. But just in general, is that okay with everybody?
To wait until we get more feedback, or?
Can you do that, Tony?
Bring you
Figure out-
back a budget and,
Yeah.
yeah,
Give
Bring
us
back a plan.
yeah.
Give us that plan, and then we'll bring it up
Well, and I
again.
think that includes kind of the average camper, how many campers are coming too. That would,
Okay.
yeah, that would.
Well, let's not camp too long on this issue. Any other comments or questions? Because I'm going to adjourn real quick here. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you. Thanks for coming.